The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Beige envelope, crisp lettering. It smelled of cheap perfume and self-importance. I didn't even have to walk to the mailbox. Our mailbox, a black, non-threatening rectangle, Model 4B, approved in the Covenant, page 87, is attached to the house. The mail carrier, a long-suffering woman named Doris, had to physically walk onto my porch and slide it through the slot, an act which I'm sure Brenda, our neighborhood's self-appointed warden, timed with a stopwatch from her window across the street. The envelope landed on the welcome mat with a soft thwump that sounded, to my ears, like a tiny guillotine. "Dear resident," it began, which is HOA speak for, "Listen up, you peasant." I knew before I even opened it. It was from her, Brenda Higgins. I left it on the mat for a minute, just staring at it. I work from home as an IT consultant, which means my day is a series of quiet, logical problems. A server is down, a database is slow. You find the problem, you fix it. It's clean. This was the opposite of clean. This was beige. This was Maple Creek Estates. When my wife Sarah and I moved in 3 years ago, we liked the quiet. We liked the good schools. We did not read the 240-page covenant of rules, regulations, and aesthetic requirements. We were young, naive, and just happy to have a mortgage. We didn't realize we hadn't just bought a house. We'd joined a beige-colored cult run by a woman who wears a tennis visor indoors. I sighed, picked up the letter, and opened it. The perfume smell intensified. Lavender and judgment. It has come to the attention of the Architectural Review Committee. It has come to the attention. Like it was a rumor. Like they hadn't been taking high-resolution telephoto lens pictures of my front yard for a week. That a non-compliant yard art structure has been erected on your property at 124 Willow Lane. My eyes drifted out the front window to the structure in question. His name was Cluck Norris. He was an 8-foot-tall rooster sculpture I'd welded myself. His body was the fender of a 1982 Honda Accord I'd hauled out of a junkyard. His legs were 2-inch thick rebar, his wattle was a piece of an old stop sign, and his magnificent, arching tail feathers were a fan of rusted, razor-sharp license plates from 5 different states. He was, in my humble opinion, a masterpiece of suburban folk art. Sarah called him our rusty guardian. I'd spent 3 months on him in the garage, welding, grinding, clear-coating the rust so it wouldn't stain the driveway. I was proud of him. He was the one single thing in our entire visual landscape that wasn't taupe, beige, or muted forest green. I continued reading. Per Section 4, Paragraph 2.b of the Maple Creek Covenant, all yard art must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee to ensure community harmony. This structure is deemed a visual nuisance and aesthetically aggressive. Aesthetically aggressive. I didn't know art could commit assault. You have 7 days from the receipt of this notice to remove the offending structure. Failure to comply will result in a fine of $25 per day. I folded the letter. I looked at Cluck. The sun glinted off his Idaho license plate tail. He looked proud. Defiant. "Frank, everything okay?" Sarah walked into the hallway, holding a mug of coffee. She glanced at the beige envelope in my hand. "Oh no, what is it this time? Is the grass half an inch too high?" "They're coming for Cluck," I said, my voice grim. "What? They can't do that. He's art!" "He is, and I quote, an aesthetically aggressive visual nuisance." Sarah blinked. "Aggressive? He's a chicken." That's what I'm saying. Just then, as if summoned by the scent of fresh litigation, I saw her. A flash of neon pink lycra passed the window. Brenda Higgins, in the flesh, power-walking her way up my driveway. She wasn't even pretending to be on a walk. She had made a 90-degree turn from the sidewalk. "She's here," I said, opening the front door. Brenda was already on the porch, dabbing at her forehead with a towel. She had her visor pulled low. "Frank." She nodded, a sharp, bird-like motion. She didn't smile. I don't think her face knows how. "Brenda, nice visor. You got the notice, I trust?" "I did, Frank, and I have to say I'm disappointed." "Brenda," I said, leaning against the doorframe, trying to project an aura of unbothered calm. "You mean the fan mail? Yeah, I got it. You spelled masterpiece wrong, by the way." She ignored me, her gaze fixed on Cluck Norris. "The structure is in clear violation. It's aggressive. It's got sharp edges." "He's a chicken, Brenda, not a velociraptor. What's he gonna do, rust on your lawn?" "It's not harmonious," she hissed, as if the word itself caused her physical pain. "It doesn't fit the aesthetic of Maple Creek, and it's not approved. You have 7 days to remove it, Frank, or the fines begin. $25 a day." I did some quick math in my head. $25. You know, for that price, I might just keep him. $9,100 a year. Seems like a fair price for artistic freedom. Maybe I'll make him a friend. A cow made of hubcaps. Call it Muhammad Ali. Brenda's eyes narrowed into tiny beige slits. I had gone too far, which was exactly as far as I wanted to go. "Don't test me, Frank. I will put a lien on your house. We all agreed to the rules when we moved in. It's what keeps our property values high." "My property value just went up, Brenda. This is a one-of-a-kind art installation." "It's junk, Frank. You have 7 days. Have a harmonious day." She spun on the heel of her white, orthopedic New Balance sneakers and power-walked away, her arms pumping. I watched her go, my blood boiling. I wasn't even that attached to the chicken. I mean, I liked him, but I wasn't going to build a new religion around him. What I was attached to was the principle. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of one person telling another person what they can and can't have on their own property because it wasn't harmonious. I turned and looked at Cluck. He stared back, his stop sign wattle gleaming. "All right, big guy," I muttered. She drew first blood. Sarah came up behind me and put a hand on my shoulder. "You're going to build the hubcap cow, aren't you?" "No," I said, a new, terrible, and wonderful idea starting to form in my mind. "I'm going to read the rule book." I went inside and grabbed the 3-ring binder from the bottom of our office bookshelf, the one we'd been given at closing and told to keep for our records. The Maple Creek Covenant, Conditions and Restrictions. 240 pages of pure, distilled joylessness. I sat at the dining room table. I cracked it open. "She thought she was fighting over a metal chicken," I said to myself, grabbing a yellow highlighter. She had no idea she'd just declared war. The problem wasn't the art. The problem was the definition. I didn't emerge from the dining room for 2 days. My life became a blur of legal-size paper, lukewarm coffee, and spite. Sarah, to her credit, treated me like a scientist on the verge of a breakthrough. She'd quietly bring me sandwiches, which I'd eat without tasting, and refill my coffee, which I'd drink without noticing. "Find anything, General?" she asked on the evening of the first day. She was peering over my shoulder at a sea of yellow, pink, and green highlighter marks. "It's a fortress," I muttered, my eyes bloodshot. "It's impenetrable. They've got rules for everything. Mailbox color, page 87. Shrub height, Page 112. All foundation plantings must not exceed 36 inches in height. Approved. Approved. Species of deciduous trees, Appendix B. They've banned flags, gnomes, pinwheels, and reflective lawn spheres. Did you know our basketball hoop is non-compliant? The backboard is supposed to be clear acrylic, not opaque fiberglass. Frank, you're losing it. It's just a chicken. It's not about the chicken, Sarah. It's about tyranny. The tyranny of beige. I kept reading. I read about paint finishes, satin or eggshell, never semi-gloss. I read about fence materials, cedar or vinyl, never chain link. I read about the approved number of pets, 2 domestic, non-farm, which I guess Cluck technically violated if he were, you know, alive. I was on page 190. I was losing hope. The yard art section, section 4, was 10 pages long. It was an ironclad, airtight trap designed by a committee of lawyers who probably all summered in the Hamptons and hated joy. It defined art. It defined structure. It defined decoration. It was brilliant in a soul-crushing kind of way. My eyes were glazing over. I was deep in the appendices. Appendix D, fining schedules. Appendix E, approved exterior paint swatches. Beige, taupe, Greiga, and adventurous moss. And then I saw it. I almost flipped right past it. It wasn't in landscaping or architecture. It was a tiny, forgotten section. Section 12, Utilities and Public Works. I sat up. My back cracked. I read the first paragraph. All homeowner-installed utilities, including but not limited to supplemental lighting, irrigation systems, and generator hookups, must be installed by a licensed contractor, meet all municipal, state, and federal codes, and be properly permitted by the city. I read it again. And again. I scanned the rest of the section. It was a ghost town. It was half a page long. It was clearly an afterthought, written by a lawyer who assumed no one would be crazy enough to install their own anything. There was no mention of committee approval, no mention of aesthetics, no mention of harmony, no mention of color, height, or brightness. It just had to be up to code. Frank? Sarah asked, hearing my sudden, sharp intake of breath. Sarah, I said, my voice trembling with a terrifying, beautiful revelation. Sarah, get in here. She came over, wiping her hands on a dish towel. What is it? You look pale. I pointed at the paragraph. Read this. She read it. Okay. So if we want a new sprinkler system, we have to pull a permit. What's the big deal? I stood up, knocking my chair over. I didn't care. I grabbed her by the shoulders. Honey, they said no yard art. They said no structures. They said no decorations. But did they say anything about municipal infrastructure? Sarah's brow furrowed. She looked at the page, then at me. What, like a fire hydrant? I'm thinking bigger, I yelled, running to my office and grabbing my laptop. I scrambled back to the table, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Frank, what are you doing? You're scaring me a little. I'm shopping, I said. I typed in a guess. Decommissioned city property for sale. And there it was. A magical place, a website. https www.google.com/search decommissionedcityprops.com. It was a wonderland. They had parking meters, 120 $. They had park benches, 300. They had fire hydrants, non-functional, great for dogs, 220s. And then I saw it. Item Na44B, Kraus-Heinz 3-light traffic signal, 12-foot galvanized steel pole included. Yellow casing. Used, minor wear. Fully functional. $450. It was glorious. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It was 12 feet of pure, unadulterated, malicious compliance. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, looking over my shoulder. "Frank, no." "Frank, yes," I said, my voice low and steady. "It's not art, Sarah. It's supplemental lighting, per Section 12. It's a traffic light, Frank. You're going to put a traffic light in our front yard?" 5 feet from the mailbox, I said, my mind already racing. "I'm going to pour a concrete footing. I'll run a 220 line from the garage subpanel. It'll be gloriously up to code. Brenda will have an aneurysm." "That's the spirit." I grabbed my phone and clicked Add to Cart. Shipping, $150. Freight. A bargain. My purchase complete, I opened a new tab. Electricians near me. The first result was Gary's Electric & Sons. No job too weird. Perfect. I dialed the number. A gravelly voice answered on the second ring. "Gary's Electric, what's the problem?" "No problem, Gary," I said, pacing the dining room, practically vibrating with energy. "I have a project. I need a quote. I need to install a 12-foot steel pole in my front yard, pour a 2-foot concrete footing, and run a 220-volt line to it." Gary was all business. "Okay, what's it for? A big old flagpole? Maybe one of them fancy ham radio antennas?" "Not exactly," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's for a lamp." There was a pause on the line. I could hear a ratchet clicking in the background, then it stopped. "A 12-foot pole for a lamp?" "It's a big lamp," I said. "A very specific lamp. Look, Gary, it's a decommissioned traffic light." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I thought he'd hung up. I could hear his breathing. "Gary, you there?" Then, slowly, a low chuckle started. It built into a full-on, wheezing cackle. "You got an HOA, don't you?" He finally managed to get out. "Her name is Brenda," I said. This sent him into another fit of laughter. I could hear him yelling to someone else. Mo, you gotta hear this. This guy's putting in a traffic light to piss off his HOA." He came back to the phone, gasping for air. "Oh man, that's rich. That is, chef's kiss. Rich. Yeah, kid, I can do it. But we're doing this by the book. I'm pulling a city permit for a private utility lamp. We'll get it inspected. We'll make it so legal that old biddy can't say a damn thing." "That's exactly what I want to hear, Gary. My guys will be there Friday, 8 a.m. sharp. Oh, this is going to be awesome. I'm bringing my good truck." I hung up. I looked at Sarah. She had her face in her hands, but her shoulders were shaking with laughter. 7 days, Brenda," I said to the beige envelope on the table. "I'll see your 7 days, and I'll raise you 1 municipal-grade, 12-foot-tall traffic signal." Friday arrived not with a bang, but with the thrum-thrum-thrum of a heavy-duty diesel engine and the high-pitched beep-beep-beep of a vehicle backing up. It was 7:58 a.m. I was on the porch with a coffee, vibrating like a plucked guitar string. Sarah was peeking through the blinds, muttering, "I can't believe this is happening. I am an accessory to a felony." "It's not a felony, honey. It's a permitted installation." "It feels like a felony." Gary hadn't lied. He brought his good truck. It wasn't a van. It was a full-sized cherry-picker utility truck, the kind you see repairing power lines. Behind it, he was towing a trailer with a small gas-powered cement mixer and a terrifying-looking auger. Strapped to the truck's flatbed like a captured whale, was my traffic light. It was 12 feet of beautiful, chipped, yellow-painted steel. 2 young apprentices hopped out. One was skinny, with a face full of bewildered acne. The other was built like a vending machine and looked like he just wanted to get this over with and go home. Gary jumped out of the cab, a massive grin on his face. He was wearing a tool belt that looked like it weighed more than I did. "Morning, Frank," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the pre-work silence of Maple Creek. "Beautiful day for an illumination." Across the street, Brenda's front door opened. She emerged, not in her power-walking gear, but in a beige bathrobe. She was holding a mug that said, "World's Best President," and her face was a perfect mask of horrified confusion. Every curtain in Maple Creek was twitching. Phones were out. I saw my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, lower his newspaper and just stare. "Gary," I said, walking out to meet him, my voice full of fake, cheerful professionalism. "Good to see you. This must be the team." "That's right. This here is Mo," he said, slapping the skinny, bewildered kid on the back. "And that's Larry." The vending machine grunted. Mo looked from the truck to the house to me. Boss?" he said, his voice cracking. What is this? You said we were installing a lamp." "It is a lamp, Mo," Gary said, unstrapping the massive pole. "Customer wants a lamp, a big one. Now go get the auger. We're going 3 feet down." "She's a beaut, Frank," Gary said, patting the yellow casing of the light itself. It was resting on the grass, looking like a prop from a post-apocalyptic movie. "Classic Kraus-Heinz. They don't make 'em like this anymore. All LED garbage now. This baby's got soul. And 150-watt incandescent bulbs." "Only the best, Gary," I said. "Now where do we put it? I was thinking right here." I pointed to a spot I'd marked with a small flag. 5 feet from the mailbox, 10 feet from the curb. Maximum visibility. Gary nodded, looking at the spot with the seriousness of a surgeon. "Good setback. Won't interfere with the sidewalk. And, yep," he looked across the street. "Perfect line of sight to, what's her name? Brenda. To Brenda's living room window. Okay, boys, fire it up. Let's make a hole." The sound of the gas-powered auger was transcendent. It wasn't the polite whir of a neighbor's lawnmower. It was a deep, throaty, earth-chewing roar that shattered the suburban silence into a million tiny pieces. A flock of sparrows exploded from a nearby, and presumably approved, maple tree. Brenda's coffee mug visibly rattled in her hand. Her eye had started to twitch. It was glorious. They pulled a truly staggering amount of dirt and clay out of my lawn. 3 feet deep, 2 feet wide. "Now the concrete," Gary yelled over the din of the mixer. They poured bag after bag into the mixer, a gray, soupy vortex of malicious compliance. "So, think the footing's deep enough?" I asked Gary conversationally, as his team directed the chute of wet cement into the hole. Gary laughed. "Frank, this footing could stop a truck. Your HOA president could drive her little crossover right into it, and this pole wouldn't budge. I guarantee it. This thing ain't ever coming down. Not without a backhoe." They finished pouring, smoothed the top, and then the main event. "All right, Frank," Gary said, rubbing his hands together. "Let's raise the standard." Mo and Larry bolted the pole to a base plate, and Gary got into the cherry picker's bucket. He expertly maneuvered the crane, hooked onto the pole, and with a high-pitched hydraulic whine, he lifted it. It rose into the air. 12 feet of gleaming, galvanized steel. It was majestic. Frank, Gary, Mo, and Larry guided it onto the fresh concrete, sinking the mounting bolts deep. They used levels. They checked it. They double-checked it. It was perfectly plumb. "Now the head!" Gary yelled. He went back up in the bucket, attached the traffic light itself to the top of the pole, and swung back down. The three of them stood back with me, hands on hips, admiring their work. It was 2:00 p.m. The cement needed to set, but the hard part was done. "All right, boys," Gary said. "Let's get this thing juiced. Mo, run the conduit along the garage. Larry, you're with me on the sub-panel." They worked for another 2 hours. They were professionals. They dug a neat trench, laid conduit, pulled the heavy-gauge wire, and mounted a big, industrial-looking gray breaker box on the side of my garage. It was beautiful. It looked official. Brenda had, at some point, retreated inside, but her blinds were open. A single 1-inch sliver. She was watching. Finally, Gary came over, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "All right, Frank, here's the fun part. She's all tied in. I'm tying it into your garage sub-panel, just like we said. I'm putting the main switch right here." He patted the big gray box. "And, as a little bonus, I'm also installing a programmable timer. Now." He lowered his voice. "Do you want a standard 60-second cycle? Or something special?" "What do you mean, special?" I asked, my heart leaping. Gary grinned, revealing a gold tooth. "Well, I could wire it so the red light stays on, say, for a really long time, like 5 minutes, and the green for 10 seconds. Or I could set it to a 1-second yellow and a 3-second green. Really inefficient." I thought about it. The sheer, exquisite pettiness of a 5-minute red light. It was tempting. But no, this had to be professional. "Gary," I said, putting a hand on his shoulder, "you're an artist, a true visionary. But let's do a standard 60-second cycle. Red, green, yellow. We're civilized people, after all." "Got it," he said, winking. He fiddled with the timer's dials. Click, whir, clack. Standard municipal cycle. 60 seconds red, 60 seconds green, 4 seconds yellow. She's all yours. It was 4:00 p.m. The job was done. The tools were packed. The cement was setting. Gary, Frank, Mo, and Larry stood in the driveway, hands on hips. The whole crew was looking at the gray box. "She's all set, Frank," Gary said, handing me the bill, which I paid with the biggest smile of my adult life. "City permits in the box, laminated. Inspection set for Monday, but she's good to go. You want to do the honors?" "It would be my pleasure," I said. I walked to the gray box. I could feel the eyes of the neighborhood on me. I could feel Brenda's hate rays boring into the back of my skull. I put my hand on the big, black breaker switch. I took a deep breath, tasting the air of freedom. And I threw the switch. There was a loud thunk, clack. For a second, nothing. Then a click, a whir of a relay. And then a glorious, piercing, municipal-grade red light flooded my yard. It wasn't a Christmas red. It wasn't a romantic red. It was a stop your vehicle now red. An obey me red. It was so bright. It painted my green grass a deep, bloody crimson. It painted the beige house across the street, Brenda's house, in the exact color of her own rage. We all just stared. It was magnificent. A window slammed open across the street. A sound I had only dreamed of pierced the air. "Reynolds!" I looked at Gary. He looked at me. He was beaming. I turned towards Brenda's house, and in my mind, I just had one thought. Game on, Brenda. Game on. The first night was magical. We ordered pizza because it felt like an occasion. We sat in the living room, and every 60 seconds the entire room would change color. Clack, click, whir. The room was bathed in a deep stop sign red. The shadows on the wall were sharp and dramatic. Then, 60 seconds later, clack, click, whir. A brilliant, go green. It made the houseplants look radioactive. Then 4 seconds of clack, click, whir. A warm, hurry the hell up, amber. Then back to red. It was rhythmic. It was hypnotic. It was, I soon discovered, incredibly bright. Frank, Sarah said, squinting at the TV. I can't see the screen. It's like we're trying to watch a movie in a disco. It's ambiance, honey, I said, taking a bite of pepperoni. Look, we can pretend we live in a bustling metropolis. Not here. It's got character. It's giving me a headache, Frank. And the clicking, it's so loud. That's the sound of freedom, Sarah. The click-clack of liberty. We are definitely getting blackout curtains for this room, she muttered. But she was smiling. I slept like a baby, lulled to sleep by the faint clack-click from the garage and the periodic, gentle sweep of red light across the bedroom ceiling. The next morning, I was in the kitchen, eating a bowl of cereal and watching my light cycle in the bright morning sun. It was just as impressive in the daylight. A 12-foot, yellow-cased middle finger to the beige committee. That's when I saw the car. A white and blue city police patrol car. It slowed as it passed my house, then pulled a U-turn and stopped. Not one, but 2 officers got out. And of course, there was Brenda. She was on her lawn, in her bathrobe and visor, waving them down like she was flagging a life raft. She was pointing. She was gesticulating. I'm pretty sure I saw the words public menace and blinding being formed by her furious lips. I sighed, grabbed my coffee mug, and walked outside, projecting an air of, "What seems to be the trouble, officers?" The 2 officers were standing on the sidewalk, just staring up at the light. It was currently green. One was a rookie. You could tell. His uniform was crisp, his eyes were wide, and he had his serious notebook out. The other was a grizzled veteran. He had the kind of mustache that had seen 3 decades of suburban stupidity, and he looked like he was 10 days from retirement and had 0 patience left for any of it. His name tag read Miller. Dispatch said... Miller sighed, not even looking at me yet. He was just looking at the light. I'm quoting, "an illegal traffic signal. I thought they meant a broken one at the main intersection. Not this." I ambled over, mug in hand. "Morning, officers. Beautiful day, isn't it? Traffic's a little light, but what can you do?" The rookie, Barnes, spun around. "Sir, is this yours?" "It is," I said cheerfully. "It's my new lamp. Just had it installed yesterday. Gary's Electric. Great guys. City permit's right on the pole if you want to see it. It's laminated." Brenda, who apparently couldn't stand being left out, shrieked from her yard, a safe 50 feet away. "He's blinding me, officer. It's a public nuisance. It shined in my window all night. He's impersonating a city." Officer Miller held up a meaty hand to quiet her, not even bothering to look. He turned his tired eyes to me. "Sir," he said, in a voice that was clearly his last-ditch attempt at civility, "you can't just have a traffic light." "Why not?" I asked, taking a sip of coffee. I was genuinely curious. "It's on my property. It's not on the public street. It's set back 10 feet. It's not directing traffic. See? The road is over there." I pointed. "This is aimed at at my bushes. And, okay, slightly at Brenda's house, but mostly my bushes. It's just a light, a big, colorful, supplemental light." Officer Barnes was flipping frantically through his notebook, as if he was looking for the specific ordinance covering residential traffic. Signals. But it looks like a traffic light, sir. It could confuse drivers." I raised an eyebrow. "Confuse them into doing what? Stopping on my lawn?" "Officer, my driveway is not a public intersection. Any driver who gets confused by a traffic light pointing sideways at a house in the middle of a residential street probably shouldn't be driving at all. In fact, you'd be doing the city a service by pulling their license." "Officer Miller." I saw it, a tiny twitch, the barest ghost of a smile, instantly suppressed. He was trying so hard not to laugh. He walked over to the pole. He squinted at the gray box. He unclipped the laminated permit and read it. He read the whole thing, top to bottom. "He pulled a permit," Miller said to Barnes, his voice flat, "for a private utility lamp." He looked at the conduit running to the garage. "It's wired to his house panel. It's to code." He turned back to me. His eyes were sharp. "This is because of the chicken, isn't it?" I took a long, slow sip of my coffee, holding his gaze. "I have no idea what you're talking about, officer." Miller nodded, as if this confirmed everything. He tucked the permit back into its sleeve. But Sarge," Barnes sputtered, It's a traffic light. There has to be something we can do." Miller turned and walked past Barnes, heading for Brenda, who was vibrating on her lawn, waiting for her righteous justice. "Ma'am," Miller said, loud enough for me to hear. Brenda leaned in, her face eager. "I hate to say it, but it's not illegal." Brenda's face fell. "What? But it's on his property, ma'am," Miller continued, his voice resonating with finality. "He's not impeding or directing public traffic. He's not impersonating a police officer. It's properly permitted as a lamp. A very large lamp. As far as the city police department is concerned, this is a civil matter between you and your homeowners association." "A civil matter!" Brenda shrieked, her voice going up an octave. "It's shining in my window! It's an eyesore!" Officer Miller, God bless him, didn't miss a beat. "Then I suggest you buy some curtains, ma'am." He turned. "Sir?" He nodded at me. He walked back to the patrol car. "But, Sarge, it's a traffic light," Barnes whispered, still staring at it, his entire worldview shattered. The light clacked and turned to amber. "Get in the car, Barnes," Miller sighed. They got in and drove away. The silence that fell over Willow Lane was delicious. It was just me, my coffee, and Brenda, who had gone a shade of beige that was almost gray. She was frozen. She looked like she'd been unplugged. I gave her a polite, neighborly wave. The light clacked, clicked, and turned a brilliant, beautiful green. "You may now proceed." I went back inside. The cops may have abdicated, but the war was far from over. It had just escalated. The neighborhood, which had been a quiet sea of beige indifference, fractured. The story of my lamp, the cops, and Brenda's "buy some curtains" moment spread like wildfire. The Community Next Door app, which was usually just a feed of lost cats and blurry photos of suspicious delivery drivers, became a war zone. It was glorious. The neighborhood split into two distinct, warring factions. Team Brenda, about 30%, was comprised of the HOA board members, people who used the word aesthetics in casual conversation, and anyone who genuinely believed a beige house was a sign of good moral character. Their posts were all about property values and think of the children, and it's just tacky. Then there was Team Frank, the other 70%. This was the silent majority, the people who had been fined for unapproved shades of garden hoses. The families told their kids basketball hoops were visually disruptive. They were living for this. Their posts were simple: laughing emojis, popcorn emojis, and "You, sir, are my hero." Brenda, however, was not one to be defeated by public opinion. She controlled the fines, and the fines began. The first letter arrived 2 days after the cop incident. Beige envelope. This time I opened it with a smile. Official notice of violation. Fine, $50. Reason: unapproved structure. Section 4, para 2.b. She was citing the yard art section. A bold, if predictable, move. I sat down at my laptop and typed out a reply. Dear Brenda and the Architectural Review Committee, thank you for your letter of date. I believe there has been a misunderstanding. The item in question is not an unapproved structure, as defined in Section 4, yard art. It is supplemental lighting, which is governed by Section 12, Utilities and Public Works. As you can see from the attached laminated copy of City Permit number B451, the private utility lamp was installed by a licensed contractor and found to be fully compliant with all municipal codes. Section 12 makes no mention of a required ARC approval for utility installations, only that they be up to code. I trust this clears up the confusion. Respectfully, Frank Reynolds. I printed it, put it in a crisp white envelope, and walked it across the street, placing it right in her mail slot. My first draft had been simpler. It just said, Dear Brenda, per Officer Miller of the City PD, this is a civil matter. It is a lamp. See attached permit. Respectfully, kiss my ass. Frank. Sarah made me rewrite it. She was, as usual, the voice of reason. The second fine arrived a week later. Brenda was changing tactics. Official notice of violation. Fine, $100. Second notice. Reason: nuisance lighting. Section 9, para 4.a, lighting, which causes undue annoyance. Nuisance lighting. She was getting creative. I sat down and typed out my second reply. Dear Brenda and the committee, thank you for your second notice. I was distressed to hear that my supplemental lighting was causing an undue annoyance here at 124 Willow Lane. We are all about community harmony. In the spirit of compromise, I have made a significant adjustment. I have consulted with my licensed electrician, Gary, of Gary's Electric & Sons, and we have programmed the timer. The light will now be off during quiet hours from 10 o'clock p.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. As you can see, I am more than willing to be a good neighbor. See? Compromise. Yours in harmony, Frank Reynolds. I printed it and walked it across the street. I was, of course, delighted. Now the light didn't just run all the time. It dramatically clicked on with a thunk-clack whir at 7:01 a.m., just as Brenda was bending over to get her newspaper. It was a daily, punctual good morning from me to her. This is when the real letter arrived. It wasn't beige, it was ivory. thick, expensive-feeling cardstock. The return address wasn't the HOA. It was a law firm. Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Okay, not really, but it was something just as ominous. This letter didn't use words like harmony. It used words like cease and desist. It called my lamp a public nuisance and a flagrant and willful violation of the covenant. It ended with intent to place a lien on your property and seek all available legal remedies. The fun and games were over. They were trying to take my house. Okay, Sarah said, her voice tight. This isn't funny anymore, Frank. They're serious. So am I said. I grabbed my laptop. Gary was a good start, but I think it's time to call in a professional. I found a lawyer, a guy named Mr. Finch, who specialized in one thing: suing HOAs. I sat in his office the next day. It was a wonderful office. It was piled high with actual books, not just beige decorations. He wore suspenders. He looked like a badger. I liked him immediately. I explained the whole story: the chicken, the letter, Section 4, Section 12, the cops, the fines. He just listened, expressionless. Then I showed him the photo. A glorious high-resolution photo of my traffic light, shining bright red onto Brenda's beige house. Mr. Finch stared at the photo for a long, long time. A traffic light, he said, his voice a dry rasp. A lamp, I corrected. A utility lamp. He looked from the photo to the 240-page covenant I'd brought. He read Brenda's letters. He read the law firm's cease and desist. Finally, he looked up at me. Frank, he said, this is the stupidest, most beautiful, and most legally fascinating thing I have ever seen, and I've been practicing real estate law for 30 years. So, am I screwed? Finch steepled his fingers. Oh, absolutely. They can fine you. They can fine you until you bleed, and given that you've installed a 12-foot municipal traffic signal in your front yard, they can probably convince a judge it's a nuisance. They can put a lien on your house. And they will. They're bullies, and this is what bullies do. My stomach sank. So I lose? I have to take it down? A slow reptilian smile spread across Mr. Finch's face. Oh no, he said. We're not going to lose. We're not taking anything down. He picked up the stack of letters. They're suing you for a nuisance. We, he said, are going to countersue for selective enforcement, harassment, and, let's see. He tapped the first beige letter. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. I blinked. From a chicken statue? From the targeted, malicious, and arbitrary enforcement of a vaguely written covenant, Finch said, his eyes gleaming. This isn't about your lamp, Frank. This is about your freedom. It's about Cluck Norris. Now, tell me more about this garden hose fine you mentioned. I was no longer just a guy with a lamp. I was a plaintiff. The lawsuit, it turned out, was the nuclear option. The moment Finch filed his countersuit, the HOA's lawyers had to pause. But Brenda, fueled by pure uncut spite, didn't pause. She escalated. She called an emergency all-hands meeting at the community clubhouse. The email subject line was, regarding the non-compliant nuisance at 124 Willow Lane and the future of our community. She was, essentially, putting me on trial in front of the whole neighborhood. We have to go, Finch said when I called him. This is perfect. It's a public hearing. Let her talk. Let her hang herself. The night of the meeting, the clubhouse was packed. I'd never seen more than 10 people in here, usually for a sad holiday cookie exchange. Tonight, there were at least 100. Every folding chair was taken. People were lining the walls. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee, industrial carpet, and suburban rage. Sarah and I sat in the front row. Finch was beside me, looking calm, his briefcase on his lap. The room was visibly divided. On the right side, Team Brenda. The board, her cronies, the ones who ironed their polo shirts to watch TV. On the left side, Team Frank. The people with the slightly too long grass, the ones with the unapproved welcome mats, the family who had dared to paint their front door a non-standard shade of dark red. It was like a bad wedding. Brenda stood at the podium, gavel in hand. She banged it. "Gavel! Gavel! This emergency meeting of the Maple Creek Homeowners Association is now in session," she announced, her voice trembling with self-importance. She then launched into a speech. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive, pearl-clutching rhetoric. She talked about community standards. She talked about harmony. She talked about aesthetics and the sanctity of our neighborhood. She talked about our shared investment and the common good. "We are a community of rules," she said, her voice cracking, as if she was on the verge of tears. "Rules that we all agreed to, rules that protect us. And when one person decides that those rules don't apply to them, that their personal, tacky, aggressive joke is more important than the peace and property values of everyone else, then the very fabric of our community is threatened." She was getting worked up. It's just not nice," she finally sputtered. "It's a traffic light, in a yard. What's next? A bus stop? A toll booth? It has to stop." She got a smattering of applause from Team Brenda. She sat down, looking smug, having made her case. "Thank you, Brenda," said the vice president, a nervous man named Dave. "Now, does the resident, Frank Reynolds, wish to respond?" All eyes turned to me. Finch tapped my arm. "Go on," he whispered. "Speak from the heart, and mention the chicken." I stood up. My knees were shaking. I hate public speaking. I'm an IT guy. I talk to servers. I walked up to the podium. The microphone screeched. Hi," I said. The entire room was silent. "Look, I'm not a public speaker. I'm an IT guy. I just like to build things." I took a deep breath. "I built a chicken. Some Snickers from the back. His name is Cluck Norris. He's made of a 1982 Honda fender and 3 feet of rebar and some old license plates. And I like him. He's harmonious to me." Brenda scoffed, loudly. "Brenda and the board told me he was an eyesore and aggressive. They told me to take him down. They fined me." "So I did," I continued, my voice getting a little stronger. "I took him down, and then I read the rule book, the 240-page rule book that tells me what shade of taupe I can paint my own front door, the rule book that says my kid's basketball hoop is non-compliant." I held up a copy of the covenant. "And I read it, all of it, and I found Section 4, which is 10 pages of no. And I found Section 12, which is half a page of as long as it's up to code. So I installed a lamp, a big one, a permitted, code-compliant, professionally installed lamp. I followed the rules, your rules. And now Brenda and the board are bypassing the rules they wrote and are threatening to take my house." I looked out at the crowd. This isn't about a lamp. It's not even about the chicken. It's about this. I held up the binder. It's about a board that uses this book, not to protect property values, but as a weapon. To bully anyone who dares to be different. To fine people for... My speech was not great. It was kind of petering out. And then, a voice from the back saved me. An old guy in a flannel shirt stood up. It was Mr. Henderson, from 3 doors down. "He's right," Henderson yelled, his voice surprisingly strong. "You fined me last month, Brenda. You fined me $50. You said my garden hose was an unapproved shade of green." A woman next to him stood up. "And you made the Millers tear out their kid's swing set. You said it wasn't pressure-treated cedar, it was pine." Suddenly, Team Frank was on its feet. "You sent me a warning about my welcome mat. My mailbox is half an inch too low and you're fining me $10 a day. You said my wind chimes were sonically aggressive. You measured my shrubs. Brenda, with a tape measure." The room erupted. It wasn't about my traffic light anymore. It was about everything. All the pent-up, beige-fueled rage of the last 10 years was uncorked. People were yelling. They were airing all their grievances. Brenda was banging the gavel. "Order! Order! This is not on the agenda." Dave, the vice president, was cowering. Team Brenda was suddenly looking very, very small. Mr. Finch leaned over to me as the chaos swirled. "And that," he whispered, a smile on his face, "is how you win a civil case. Let's go home, Frank. Our work here is done." It was beautiful. The fallout was immediate and devastating. For Brenda. An emergency recall petition was filed the next day. Within a week, the entire board, Brenda, Dave, and the Ironed Polo Squad, was voted out in a landslide. The HOA's law firm, upon hearing of the public revolt, and probably after a very pointed call from Mr. Finch, paused all legal action, citing a desire to seek community-based resolution. A new emergency-elected board was put in place. The new president? A very reluctant Mr. Henderson, the man with the unapproved garden hose. His first official act was to call a meeting, not in the clubhouse, but on my front lawn. It was just him, me, and Sarah. He was holding a beer. We gave him one. "Frank," he said, taking a long sip and looking up at the traffic light, which was currently green. "I gotta be honest. I hate this damn thing. It's ridiculous." "I know," I said. "But," he continued, "I hate what Brenda was doing even more. So, we need to find a compromise. The nuisance lawsuit is dead, but half the neighborhood is getting a headache." "I'm willing to be a good neighbor," I said, "now that neighbor is a two-way street." We struck a deal. It was a simple 3-point truce. I would have Gary come back and aim the light slightly downward so it illuminated my lawn more and Brenda's bedroom window less, but not 0. I would program the sleep mode from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Not off, but it would just stay on a constant, sleepy amber yellow. A beacon of caution. In exchange, the new HOA board would formally strike every fine from my record, apologize in writing for the harassment, and, this was Finch's idea, formally and retroactively approve 1 8-foot-tall scrap metal rooster sculpture, to be known as Cluck Norris. That night, Sarah and I sat on the porch, drinking beers. It was 9:00 p.m. Cluck Norris was back in his spot of honor, right under the traffic light. He looked like a king on his throne. The light clicked from red to yellow to green. It was still bright. It was still absurd. It was still mine. Brenda still power walks by every morning. She doesn't look at the house. She wears her visor low and stares straight ahead. But I see her. When she gets right in front of my lawn, she always glances at the light. I like to think she's just waiting for the walk signal. But this is Maple Creek, and here, I'm the one who decides when it's safe to cross.